you doing? Good. Oh, I didn't tell you you're supposed to dress up for this? Here we go. Hi everybody. Thank you for coming to watch the video today. I appreciate all of you being around with Lefty and me. There he is right there. So today I want to talk about what are some things that you look for when you're buying a used rig. Just a quick edit here. I want to say up front that this video is focused on doing an in-person inspection. Doing a, an online auction type scenario where you're not going to see the rig. That's going to have to be a different video. This is focusing on getting in front of the rig and being able to take a look at it and all the things that I've learned from a lot of you and from my own experience. Thank you all for all the messages and allowing me to build up this library of info in my brain so that I can share it with everybody out there. The messages that I get, I don't always get back to them immediately, and I feel bad about that, and that's why I'm doing this video. So hopefully if someone has some questions, they can start by watching this video and it might be able to answer what they need. I know when you're buying your rig, it's a tense time. There's a lot of activity going on. There are rigs out there at good prices. I still see them for sale. They are out there. The best thing you can do for yourself is allow a lot of time to find the right rig. Some of the things that I talk about are more having to do with the truck part of the ambulance. So in my case, having to do with the Ford, the chassis, the engine, those kind of things. And then the other things that I talk about are specific to the ambulance portion. Things that are in the box, the different systems, and how those boxes come configured, and some of the things that you can look for when you're looking at a used rig. So I want to start talking about what to look for with an engine. So many of these rigs diesel, obviously, and there are some general diesel things that you can look for in a used engine that you want to look out for. So if you don't mind, I'm going to stand up here in the shade. It is up in the 80s for about the next 5 days, so it's hot right out there in the sun. The first thing I want to talk about having to do with the diesel engines, when you're going to look at a used rig, you want to be able to do a cold start on that engine. And what I mean by that is that the engine has sat at least overnight, and then you're the first person to start it that morning. A diesel engine relies on its glow plugs to start it when it hasn't been run, when it's cold. The system, not super involved. The glow plugs, there's a glow plug relay, and if those aren't functioning correctly, cold starts are not going to happen. It's going to fight you. That same engine, once it's warm, say you drive it, you go to the store, you shut it off, you go inside for 5-10 minutes, you come out, starts right up, because now it's warm and it's not relying on those glow plugs. You can see why doing a cold start is really important. If that truck has been running and then shut off before you get there to inspect it, you're not testing the glow plug system. So when you go to look at a rig, one of the things that you need to request from the seller is that you do the first start of the day, that it sits at least overnight and cools off. So how does the glow plug system work? If you've ever started a diesel, and my truck is just like this, you get in, you put the key in the ignition, you turn the ignition to the on position, not cranking, but you turn it to the on position, and on the dashboard a light comes on that says wait to start. So it's basically telling you to hold on, because what it's doing in that time is it's firing those glow plugs, and those glow plugs are basically heating up inside the cylinder. They get red hot, they're down in the cylinder head of the engine. They get red hot during that time, and then when it's ready, that light goes out and that's when you can turn the key and crank the engine. Very common in diesels to all have that wait light. There was a young lady that I met over this past winter. She saw my rig, she pulled over and came down to meet me, and very similar rig to mine. It was a Ford, an older Ford, and she had actually just bought it, and she told me that unbeknownst to her, when she bought it, it has a starting issue, a cold starting issue. And so I think she'd had it for just a week, but she said that every cold start in the mornings, she has to spray ether in the intake to get it to fire. That's a pretty common symptom of bad glow plugs or bad glow plug relay. If the glow plug system is not working, is that the end of the world? No. A glow plug relay, for my truck for example, $25 or $30. A whole glow plug relay and plug kit, like $120. That's with, they're under the valve covers. So the valve covers come off, so you're going to need valve cover gaskets. You get the glow plugs themselves and the relay for about $120 for that whole kit. And a competent, I could do it, you know, now that I'm not afraid of my diesel engine anymore, I could pull those valve covers off. You're going to go at it from inside, from taking the doghouse out, so you can get to the valve covers easily. Take those valve covers off, and then the glow plugs pull out. Put the new ones in. Put the new valve cover gaskets on with the wiring, the pigtails. You're going to replace those with the new gaskets. Lefty. I'm trying to shoot a video. What? Alright, the next thing that we're going to want to check under the hood, having to do with the engine, you're going to want to check the oil. I mean, that might sound like a basic thing, but it's a good indicator of how well the engine has been maintained. Ideally, you pull the dipstick out, and it should read in the full zone. My engine, the dipstick, it has a crosshatch area about yay big. Anywhere within that crosshatch area is considered full and operating range. So check the oil and make sure it has oil in it, and that the oil ideally isn't sooty black colored. Now my oil, once I've got 5,000 miles on it, my oil is really dark black. So that's not the end of the world, but ideally it's not bad looking. Now while you're under the hood, the oil filler, okay? Take the cap off of that while the engine is running, and make sure you're not puffs of smoke come out of that filler tube. That's an indicator of wear, ring wear, excessive blow-by. You're getting actually engine compression is puffing up. You shouldn't see puffs coming out of your filler tube when the engine is running. That's an indicator that there's problems, mechanical problems and wear inside of the engine block. Another thing under the hood, check the condition of the coolant. My truck has a transparent coolant reservoir, so you can see the color of the coolant and the level, and there's a fill line on that reservoir. You should see nicely colored coolant. You're going to want to look for corrosion, kind of dirt and buildup inside of that reservoir. Hopefully you don't see a bunch of that, and it should be at the level. There's a line on mine for cold, so when the engine is cold, hasn't been running, the coolant should be at that cold fill level. So give that a look before you start the engine up and see if it's at that cold fill level. I know I've mentioned it in a few of my videos that I have an OBD2 scanner, a Bluetooth device plugged into my port that's down under the steering column, and that I'm able to pull the engine codes, any trouble codes, using an app called ForScan. I highly recommend that you show up for your inspection of the rig with one of those OBD2 sensors. You can plug it in, pair it to your phone, run ForScan, and in a minute you can have the codes, any trouble codes that engine has put out. Now, if they cleared a code, or if they drove it enough for the code to clear, it'll still be in memory and you'll still be able to see it. So get one of those adapters. I'm going to put a link down below. get the ForeScan app on your phone. I'll put a link down below, and show up to the inspection ready to plug that thing in and pull codes. It's in no way affects the truck, so the seller doesn't need to be concerned that you're plugging a thing in. All it does is pull information. It doesn't do any kind of interaction with it. So you're just reading the codes if there are any. Now up under the truck, these are big, heavy vehicles. The suspension bushings and components can wear over time. So what you can do is get up under that truck and just visually look to see if the rubber bushings look like they're cracked and kind of extruding out from where they're captive. So even though you can't concretely say that the suspension is failed, you can look to see that bushings have been worn, maybe not replaced, and that's could be a bargaining chip for price. Some of the things I talk about are going to slant towards being able to negotiate a good price on the rig. If you find some things that look suspect, that's a little bit of leverage, so you can maybe negotiate a better price. The steering on a lot of these rigs has a steering stabilizer or a steering dampener, and what it looks like is a shock absorber that's attached to the steering arms up under the front end. Look to see if that is showing signs of leaking. It's an oil-filled, very similar to a shock, so it's got oil inside of it with seals, and if you see that it's wet and a bunch of dirt has been clinging to it, then that thing is leaking. You're going to want to take a look at that. Not expensive. The basic Monroe dampener for my truck is $30, and anyone can replace it. I'll guarantee anyone with basic tools can crawl up under there, unbolt the original one, bolt the new one back in a half an hour with basic tools for as little as $25–30 for a basic Monroe dampener. A lot of you are going to be looking at older rigs. You know, mine's a 2002. It's coming up on 20 years old. The rear tires on my truck are the same tires that were on it when I bought it. You're going to want to get a look at the tires and pull the date code off of them so you know how old they are. They could have all the tread. They could look brand new, but they could be 15 years old. It's really unsafe to be doing high-speed traveling on tires that are real old. So the date code is molded into the sidewall of every tire. So I'll show a screenshot here of what those codes look like and how to decipher them so that you can tell what date they were manufactured. So get a look at the tires. And again, there's a bargaining chip for price. If the tires, they might be saying tires are almost brand new, but if you can say, well, they're 15 years old, a lot of tread, but technically I shouldn't be driving on them. That's a little bargaining chip for price. So get a look at those codes. A big question that I get from people is miles. You know, what is too many miles? These big diesel engines, they can run for 500,000 and more miles with just regular proper maintenance. They'll run over 500,000 miles. A big diesel with 150,000 miles on it, it's just broken in, really. I wouldn't shy away from an engine. 200,000 miles. So figure this, the engine was maintained by a fleet. It's going to do 500,000. It has 200,000 on it. Are you going to put 300,000 more miles on that engine? I doubt it. Something that seems to come up pretty regularly is that the rig is missing its inverter. Mine was missing its inverter when I bought it. Again, a great bargaining chip. If you can go and, like, there's the wires, but the inverter's gone, you say to the seller, you know, those inverters, you know, you're talking, for the inverters that were in these rigs, they were minimum $1,000, okay? So a $1,000 inverter is missing, which results in the systems that are built into the rig now aren't going to function as they were designed because it's missing a key component. So really good leverage point for price, the missing inverter. Even though you probably were going to replace it with a different inverter, like many of us do, but still, if it's missing, you know, stomp your feet and make noise about it, because that's a big part of an ambulance, is having that inverter. Another indicator of kind of the health of the rig and how it was treated, look at the wiring overall. Open up the power cabinet inside the box and look to see if it looks intact, that you don't see a bunch of spliced wires. You shouldn't see anything that doesn't look totally professionally done in those power cabinets. They are wired up so there can be no failure. If you see any kind of butt connectors or quick crimps or anything like that, that means somebody's been in there doing some stuff, and it just might like a litmus test on how was this thing treated and what kind of life has it had. So I like to get a look at the wires in the 12-volt power cabinet, under the hood also. If it has the center console between the seats, which most do, or the doghouse has a switch panel mounted to it, if there's a bunch of spaghetti hanging out of those things, it could mean that it's led a rough life and maybe not been maintained as good as it could be. And again, another bargaining point. Doesn't mean that everything's broken and nothing's going to work, because you're going to test all that stuff, but it's another leverage point for price. Another topic I want to talk about, unfortunately, because I've had 2 pretty bad horror stories from people that bought rigs and they ended up having a whole lot of water leaks. You've got to do your best to determine if you can see that they have been leaking. A couple of areas that I would look at is look at inside the cab of the truck, look at the headliner. If it has been leaking from these marker lights, or if it's been leaking from the seam that goes all along where the cab mounts to the box, you should be able to see water staining on the headliner, so give that a look. The smell test is a good indicator of leaks. Now in the house, in the box, it's going to be difficult to see leaks because everything is sealed up. You know, you've got ceiling panels, the cabinets, the walls are all sealed up. If you have any kind of odor of moisture, you're going to want to dig deeper. Now, when I got my rig, so I've had it, what, 2.5 years. So it was, 16 years old when I got it. It smelled like a hospital hallway, kind of. It had a very medical cabinetry smell. It smelled just like it looked. If there's leaks that are caused by these outside lights, I would not be concerned about that. These lights have rubber gaskets, easy to replace, readily available, so don't let that scare you away. The one place that you really want to check, get up on the roof and check the seam where the flat part of the roof mounts to the corners. Now all the way around, it's sealed to the corners with seam sealer, and that should be rock solid. Those seams and those seals should last decades up there, the way that they're put together. If you see that those are cracked and deteriorated and they're staining around there, like water has been getting down into those seams and attracting dirt and such, that's a problem. Those 2 people that contacted me had really bad stories, and I don't want anybody to have to go through that to find out that their rig is just suffering from a lot of leakage. That's terrible. Another thing to look out for is rust, obviously. These, the van portion has steel panels, which are prone to rust. Now the boxes are made out of aluminum. Aluminum doesn't rust, okay? So you're not going to see big ugly rust patches up on the box or the doors, the cabinets, any of this. You're not going to see rust. Where you want to look is right down here. This is called the rocker. You want to make sure that these are solid. I have seen these rocker panels right here basically missing. They're just rusted so bad. Now up here, this can collect debris, leaves and dirt and such and get packed up in here, and these will rust out, the corner of the fenders here. And when you go to look at the rig, you're gonna drive that thing. Get in it and take it for a test drive. Make sure that it feels right. Now that might not be easy because it is a big vehicle and you might be coming from a small vehicle and this is the first time you've driven something like that. In that case, the best thing I would recommend is try to drive it for an hour, you know, not just for 5 minutes, but try to drive it around. If the seller is agreeable, see if you can't, tell them you'll pay for the fuel. See if you can't drive it around, you know, with them, without them, whatever they want. so that you can really get a feel for it. Take it on the expressway, get it up to 55, 60 miles an hour. It should settle right in at that expressway speed, and that's what you want to feel. You don't want to feel any shimmying or hopping in the front end. So see if you can't take it for an extended test drive. I think that's really important, and hopefully you'll be able to if you're really focused on a rig. Now, in some of my past videos where we've talked about topics where a lot of you all have a lot of experience, you know, insurance, registration, things like that, same thing on this. You guys post your comments down below, share your information with everybody so that this video becomes a repository of info for the future for people that are looking to inspect a used ambulance. Share your stuff, good or bad. I know everybody's probably got a little story about buying their rig, so put them down in the comments and let's make this a really good collated place where people can come and get some info. Because you know how it is when you're shopping for a rig, it can be an intimidating time. It really can. Send me emails, ask me questions. I do my best to get back to everybody really fast, but sometimes it's a couple or 3 days before I can get back to you. Send me emails with questions and I'll try to help you out. Sometimes what people describe to me that they're seeing in a used rig, I know the answer immediately because I've seen it 1, 2, or 3, 4, 5 times from other people that have looked at used rigs. So hopefully if you've got some questions, I can answer them for you. Thank you everybody for watching the video. Everybody take care, be safe, and we'll see y'all again really soon. That's my boy. He's such a good puppy. Okay, so, oh my gosh, Lefty. Hi everybody. Today I want to, so get one of those OB-DU. You don't want to feel any shim. Yeah! Nobody here. Come on! Come on! Yeah. It's alright, he was doing it to her a little while ago.